When you touch me, I'm crazy the way you love me,
Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back. Post-Thanksgiving, I drank and ate crap for 4 days straight. All the stuff I never eat, and tons of sugar. And my injuries hurt because of all the sugar I ate. And the booze, I can't negate that. I drank a lot, but now it's time to get back on the horse and focus on health until the next debauchery at Christmas time. So we're going to be talking about dental caries, otherwise known as cavities. Remember when we were kids? And I don't know, I'm 64 years old, so they used to make us swish fluoride when I was a kid in school. They did it in the classroom. Everybody had to do it, probably a couple, 3 times a month. And it was supposed to protect our teeth, and it probably did, actually. When we're going to some of the information we're going to talk about and why fluoride is still being used today. This is an important discussion because you can avoid using fluoride, but you have to do certain things. Before we get started, I have to thank our title sponsor, and that's Legendary Foods, makers of the Tasty Pastry. The Tasty Pastry took aim at the Pop-Tart and attempted to elevate it. And they did. It tastes better than a Pop-Tart. It tastes like real pastry. Like you're gonna think you're eating real cake. But what's better is it has less than 1 gram of sugar, 4 to 5 net carbs, and 20 grams of high-quality dairy protein. And your kids will eat them. Unlike lots of other healthy snacks that taste like garbage and kids won't eat them, your kids will eat these. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary. Use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. While you're there, check out the new sweet rolls. Legendary is amazing. They take snacks and make them taste like they're bad for you, but they're not. Show them some love. And now let's get on with our interview. We get my guest on. Welcome to the show, Dr. Philippe Hujoel. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you for having me, Carl.
So first of all, we have to say you are a dentist. You have a PhD. You're quite well versed in the discussion we're about to have right now. Why did you do this study? What was missing from all the work that had been done in the past?
So it's a long story. I don't know if you want to hear it all. I'll give you a very short.
I want to hear it all.
All right. So 2007, I was in an airport and I was not interested in nutrition at all. And I saw this book by Gary Taubes called Good Calories, Bad Calories. And I knew, Gary Taubes had published in Science, he was a very famous science reporter independently of nutrition. And I said, well, I have to read this. And so this is not a joke. I bought his book together with a bag of gummy bears. And I can say, I've not had a gummy bear since. I stopped eating gummy bears in the middle of the flight. I was shocked reading that book. I had personal health problems. I was pre-diabetic. I was, gaining weight all the time, even though I went to the gym 2 hours a day. A lot of things were going wrong in terms of blood pressure, in terms of health, and in terms of my teeth. And I read that book and I was like, oh my God, here I am, a dentist. And I never realized that, I should stop eating sugar, which was just, an amazing kind of life-changing experience for me, that book. I mean, I really thank him for, hopefully, I trusted 100% for putting my life on the right track and going, on a very low-carb diet and basically solving most of my health problems. So I got very interested in nutrition, first on sugar. And as part of that whole experiment, exploration of nutrition, and as it relates to dental disease, I became interested in vitamin D, thanks to a historian who had published work on it. He has a PhD dissertation on it. And I discovered that, there was this whole literature on vitamin D, and the randomized controlled trial evidence, I should call it controlled trial evidence, was very much supportive of vitamin D. And then overnight, the American Dental Association reversed and said it's not effective. And that really kind of got me very interested into why did they suddenly reverse on this topic. And that reversal kind of happened at the same time that they started endorsing fluoride. And so I got very interested in the history as to why it was that the American Dental Association, which was recommending a very low carbohydrate diet in 1942, was one of the first organizations, to start promoting a quote unquote well-balanced diet, which was necessary for, they said, normal pediatric growth, but which they admitted, it may not stop cavities. And so why did this happen? So that's kind of in a nutshell how I got into the nutrition field.
It's funny, you and another famous dentist, Dr. Weston A. Price, right? I mean, Weston A. Price wanted to understand why his patients had dental caries, and he happened to travel abroad. I think it was Africa. I don't know if it was sub-Saharan Africa. And what he noticed there was the elderly people had no cavities. The children had no cavities. And how could it be? They had substandard dental care there. I mean, they didn't know about brushing their teeth. They didn't know about any of the things that we knew about. And he discovered it was about nutrition. And here we are, full circle, you having an epiphany as a dentist and realizing that what happens to your teeth has more to do with what you eat.
Correct.
I did know that. I mean, I did know this. In the 60s, we were told not to eat sugar before bed. Sugar will rot your teeth. It'll eat through your teeth. And so always brush your teeth before bed and no sugar before bed. And even milk was demonized before bed because of the lactose. Oh, it'll cause cavities. So we have known that sugar plays a role. But my question is, why would organizations that are setting standards not talk about this? The World Health Organization, the USDA, the ADA. Why weren't they talking about this? This had to upset you, right? That nobody was talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, so the inside story to me looks, very logical and understandable, and you kind of feel for the people making decisions. If your dentist tells you, don't eat gummy bears or don't eat, sugar, you may decide, I'm not going to see this dentist again. What does he know about nutrition? I mean, he's not a doctor. So, dentists, because of their scope of practice, are not authoritative or, are not considered experts in the area of nutrition. So for the dental profession to start promoting fluoride is understandable. If they may say, and obviously there were dentists that thought, we really should play a major role in educating on nutrition. But other dentists, and I can see as a profession, we're not there to preach. We're not there to provide public health advice in an area that's outside of our scope of practice. we want to help people prevent dental cavities. And so fluoride is the thing that's effective, that works. So obviously that's something we recommend. In my opinion, the message should always be accompanied with, if you avoid sucrose, you avoid 80% of the dental cavities. So how do professional organizations, kind of start ignoring the harms of sugar? I have not looked at all into the American Diabetes Association or the American Heart Association, but they did similar pivotal reversals in the 20th century where they basically started saying, sugar is okay. It's an empty calorie. We can put some vitamins in the sugar and it's great. I mean, it will not cause any medical diseases. For those things to happen to me, indeed, is kind of unbelievable. I mean, obviously, if I feel now in retrospect that sugar has caused most of my health problems, I'm kind of like, why didn't they tell me? Why did they say it does not cause diabetes when, these people ahead of them had clearly provided some evidence that at least,
Right.
one ought to be careful.
What's funny? Dr. Paul Dudley White was not Teddy Roosevelt, his brother. I can't think of the president. There were two Roosevelts that were presidents, Teddy, and why can't I think of the other one? But anyway,
Franklin.
Dr. Paul Dudley White, Franklin, right? He was Franklin Roosevelt's personal physician. He's also the man who founded the American Heart Association, and he's also the man who brought from France the EKG machine, brought it to the United States. And he, in 1919, he wrote a position paper, and he said, in all my years in school, as an intern, private practice, I only encountered one myocardial infarction. He says, now fast forward. He says, Crisco was introduced in 1909. Sugar consumption has quadrupled in the past 10 years. And we are making a big mistake. Abandon the processed sugar and abandon hydrogenated oils. No one paid attention to him because at that point in time, Procter & Gamble was making money on all those two major products. They introduced Crisco as a alternative to tallow and lard, and they weren't going to have that message get out there, so they squashed that message. And then it wasn't 60 years later that we were like, oh, hydrogenated oil is bad. This is my frustration. And we just saw this happen during the pandemic. If you're an organization in a position or say things in absolutes, you say, this is good, this is bad, then when you're wrong, you should be punished. Sovereign immunity allows these organizations to say whatever they want, whatever fits their agenda at that time, and then go there, oh, well, we were wrong. All the lives that were shortened because of we were wrong. And I really think the time has come that when people, because science is never absolute, never, ever, 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 ever. Science is unfolding and it's never absolute. And there are things that we promote today that won't be true tomorrow. And we have to hold these organizations, the USDA, when they told farmers that glyphosate was safe to use, and now they're wrong. I mean, we have to hold these organizations, their feet to the fire. And really, the only way to do that is find individuals personally responsible. When you get up in front of millions of Americans and say, this is safe, and it turns out not to, you should be arrested. Your wealth should be stripped of you so your family doesn't go on and have a great life. And then if that's the repercussions, you'd see, well, they'll say, well, we're not sure, and let people make decisions on their own, because people are smart enough to take care of themselves. We don't need to be guided by these agencies. And this is my frustration. Now, you specifically keep saying sucrose. Sucrose
Correct.
is table sugar, right?
Correct.
How is that different than fructose from fruit or any other sugar? Does that not also drive dental cavities?
Yeah, so it seems really that the main driver for dental cavities from birth, or when the first tooth are up, let's say 6 months, to adulthood, let's say 25, is sucrose. Um, there's there's three sources of evidence that really point to sucrose as the dominant driver of dental cavities. One is a very rare genetic disorder, which is called hereditary fructose intolerance. These people cannot eat sucrose. So on average, they eat less than 3 grams of sucrose a day. Basically, they almost have no cavities. 80%, they have, of compared to people that do have sucrose in their diet, they prevent 80% of the cavities by avoiding sucrose and fructose in their diet. So that's one source of evidence. Then there is a very famous 5-poem study where they noticed that, even a very small introduction of sugar into the diet leads to a very rapid increase in cavities. And then, of course, we have all these studies, related to tribes that were living on very low carbohydrate diet. I'm thinking about the Sioux Indians. I'm thinking about the First Nation Indians who had incredibly beautiful teeth, no cavities, and were mostly on a carnivorous diet. I mean, they didn't have access to sugar. So we have all these different sources of evidence to really point to sucrose as a primary driver of dental decay for infants, for young children, for young adults. Once when you get above the age of 25, 30, and we get recession of our gums, the roots become exposed, then suddenly the cereals, the other carbohydrates, become also a source of dental cavities. But so if you avoid sucrose, especially for young kids, I think, between the moment of conception until the age of 12, it's a very critical time in our lives to set up a life course. In that time period, avoiding sugar will mostly, eliminate dental cavities.
I mean, that's amazing that we can eliminate cavities in young growing children by limiting how much sucrose they come in contact with. This is amazing. Look, cavities are not necessarily a disease, but growing, like my parents taught me, growing old with your own teeth is a blessing. Yeah,
Yes.
like if you're like my mother never let me. 3 different dentists wanted to take my wisdom teeth out. They all said they're going to cause you trouble later in life. They're wrong. My mother said, keep them. You chew back there. Do they bother you? I says, no, I don't have any. No, don't let them take your teeth just for the sake of taking your teeth. I lost 1 tooth in my life so far. But growing old with your own teeth is a blessing. It affects you in a lot of different ways. And so the idea of starting your children off with a good foundation is important. And if it's limiting, so I'm thinking, other than sugarcane, does sucrose naturally occur? And it does in various amounts in plants, fruits, vegetables, and nuts. Now, obviously, we concentrate sucrose to make table sugar, and then we put cups and cups of it in foods and eat the food. But sucrose appears, in your opinion, to be the driver, not fructose, not lactose.
Correct.
It's okay. Why do you think that? What is special at sucrose that it drives some changes in the oral microbiome?
That's a very good question. Sucrose, gets broken apart into glucose and fructose. And somehow, it seems like the bacteria that are present in our normal microbiome really preferentially go for sucrose in terms of starting the metabolism and starting making fructans and all these things, which lead to dental cavities. I'm not a microbiologist, so I'm not really the person to ask the question how it comes. What are the biochemical pathways why sucrose is particularly nefarious for teeth? But basically, it seems like the microbiome really reacts to sucrose. So that's why this disease, rare genetic disorder, hereditary fructose intolerance, these people, they have less than 3 grams of sugar a day, because if you eat plants, you eat sucrose in very small amounts. And it's been shown that their plaque, their microbiome that's present on their teeth, basically is almost unable to produce acids. In other words, the acidity of that plaque cannot drop below 5, which you do have when you eat sucrose.
So the pH plays a role in the development of cavities, right?
Correct. That's
the driver. That's what I was getting at. Like I was going to ask you, is there something special about the microbes fed by sucrose that do they devour the enamel? But now you're telling me they create an environment.
They create an acidic environment, correct. The pH drops, and so that's traditionally interpreted as then leading to mineral loss, and so the mineral loss then, becomes invaded by bacteria, and then you get a dental cavity.
Is there any evidence that cavities can refill themselves with minerals if the oral health is addressed? The acidity and so on.
Absolutely. So I think that's a very important message too. If you do have dental cavities, if you stop eating the carbohydrates, the enamel will remineralize. And actually, in the old days, long time ago, they used to call it ebonization because the enamel started looking black and very shiny. And that was particularly resistant to dental decay. In other words, when you have an ebonization of a cavity, that's very unlikely to develop a cavity in the future when you start eating sugar again. So the best way to avoid a cavity if you have a cavity, one thing you should always realize is it's the sugars that feed that cavity, that cavity needs carbohydrates to progress. The moment you stop eating carbohydrates, the fuel is gone. So that cavity has a very hard time progressing from that moment forward.
Interesting. Craig Hollander says sucrose is 50% glucose and 50% fructose. So if fructose doesn't cause decay, then it has to be the glucose. I was actually thinking of that. Could it just be glucose?
Yeah, so that's a biochemical question related to the microbiology. Simple sugars cause dental cavities. The extent to which they're able to produce those cavities varies. There is a lot of elegant work done in animal studies that suggests that it's mostly the sucrose content that drives dental cavities. This is not to say, that glucose, obviously carbohydrates cause dental cavities. If you eat starches, fermentable carbohydrates, they will get broken down to glucose in the oral cavity, and they also will cause dental cavities, particularly of the root surface. So if you want to get a dental cavity on the enamel, sucrose is a major driver. 80% of the cavities can be prevented by eliminating sucrose from the diet. But yes, Craig Hollander is absolutely correct in the sense that it's not just sucrose that's causing dental cavities. Fermentable carbohydrates cause dental cavities. If you're on a carnivorous diet, you're not going to get dental cavities.
And the carnivorous diet is becoming more and more popular. I don't know if you pay attention to the trends of diets, but we have a large population of carnivores today, predominantly driven by Dr. Sean Baker, who's been a frequent guest on this show. And the remarkable health changes in people eating carnivore is undeniable. And they don't have higher risk of heart disease when you look at their blood work. In fact, their blood work looks fantastic, contrary to the message that we have been given. Again,
right.
These organizations that position themselves as having authority over these messages, who tell us to eat more cereal grains. I'm like you. I was shocked when I saw diabetic cookbooks, and they always had cake and cookies on the cover because that's what diabetics want to eat instinctively. And they're trying to say, no, you can eat this stuff and still be diabetic. Well, yeah, if you eat that stuff, you will still be diabetic because that's going to promote your diabetes to a greater degree. And organizations like the American Diabetic Association, the USDA, they need to be, something has to happen. Some sort of penalty must persist when they give information that's clearly driven by economics, because let's be honest, the U.S. government subsidizes corn, wheat, they subsidize soy, and these are products that everybody is told are good to eat. Well, sure, because the government wants to get their money back. They don't want to go, yeah, we just gave out $1 billion to farmers to grow more soy and corn and wheat, and we're telling you don't eat it because they're never going to get their money back. So this is all about economics. These decisions are not being driven by what's better for people. It's what's better for the government's pocketbook. And we have to be honest. We can't ignore the big elephant in the room here. So I want to take our first commercial break. And when we come back, I want to discuss that where fluoride may have a role. We all know that fluoride is not good. There's so many good studies out there that show that fluoride is not really good for your children. It's not good for your thyroid. It's not good for a lot of things, but it may be good for something in people who don't get the idea that a low-carb diet is the way to go. And so we're going to talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. We will be right back with Dr. Philippe Hujoel and Superhuman Radio.
Dogs should be powered by fat and protein, not carbs. That's why Visionary Pet makes low-carb, ketogenic dog food for dogs of all breeds and life stages. From kibble to freeze-dried and even low-carb treats, all Visionary Pet recipes are very low-carb, ketogenic, and made with 100% real meat protein. Shop now and use code SHR for 20% off your first order today. Your dog deserves the lifelong benefits of optimal nutrition. Make the switch to Visionary and see why smart dogs eat low carb.
There have been no real breakthroughs in resistance training for over 200 years. Whether it's pulleys or free weight, they all depend on gravity and the angles associated with gravity's effect directly on the weight. All of that has changed with the ARX machine. ARX stands for adaptive resistance. The ARX machine uses a 25 horsepower motor. You are literally fighting against a 25 horsepower motor, so every single rep is your 1 rep maximum at that moment in time. But ARX leverages another technique that has been known to produce rapid muscle gains and strength, and that is it leverages the eccentric or negative portion of the rep, which completely blows every other exercise and resistance training product out of the water. Go to shrnetwork.biz/ARX and discover the future of resistance training. P3OM from Bioptimizers is a patented prebiotic and probiotic supplement with Lactobacillus plantarum OM. It has now been upgraded to P3OM 2.0 with the addition of a superfood formulation that makes it 2 times stronger, as well as optimizes L. plantarum's strength. So it's more powerful than ever, which means that not only will it help you completely digest all animal proteins, it also reduces cortisol, causes deep relaxation and better sleep, and reduces stress. Go to shrnetwork.biz/P3-OM today and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off. Merrick Health is a premium telehealth platform that connects customers with partnered providers from the comfort of your home. Merrick provides concierge service with your very own patient care provider as your health advocate. You'll go over all your needs and goals, from improving sexual function, hair loss prevention, increased muscle, fat loss, and overall improved performance. Prescribed treatment options can be ordered and shipped directly to you if you meet the requirements. All from the comfort of your home. Go to shrnetwork.biz/Merrick Health. That's MAREKHEALTH and order your comprehensives and get 10% off with code SHR. Don't forget to add the lab analysis to have results reviewed with potential over-the-counter supplements or treatment recommendations. That's shrnetwork.biz/Merrick Health and use code SHR at checkout. Or order your own desired labs with code SHR and get 10% off your first lab order.
This is the Superhuman Channel, where we use oxygen for the power of good.
Hey, welcome back. I gotta mention something on today's show. So I somebody on YouTube contacted me last week and said that I was full of BS when I said the B Strong BFR bands are better than anabolic steroids. And basically what I said was I have used a lot of performance enhancing drugs in the past 20, 25 years. Very, very large doses, those used by strength athletes worldwide. And nothing has put more muscle on me than the BFR bands. And this is the truth. I'm not lying. Anabolic steroids require a lot of work to make your muscles bigger. You can't just take them and then you just blow up. Be strong bands, if you're willing to work hard with them, and I know that everybody espouses light weights, high reps with them. That's not how I use them. I use them and I use heavy weights and I train for time so that I get the volume in, but maybe I do it in 5 and 6 rep sets. And nothing has changed. I'm looking at my shoulders today and my upper arms. It's ridiculous. My legs are growing again. You got to remember, I'm 64 years old and I'm on my lowest dose of HRT today. 250 milligrams of testosterone a week is all I'm using, nothing else. And I'm seeing changes in my body that I didn't think I'd be able to at this age. So I'm not lying when I say that BFR bands are as effective, if not more effective, than anabolic steroids, because you don't have any of the risk of liver damage and heart enlargement or any of those other things if you use them. Go to shrnetwork.biz/bstrong, BSTRONG. Use the code SHR15 for 15% off. They come in sets for the upper body and lower body, or you can buy the whole package. Build muscle easier and faster. They work. And I'm not just saying that because they're a sponsor, because I've been using them longer than they've been a sponsor. Okay, so check that out. And now let me bring my guest back. Sorry, Dr. Hujoel, I had to do a little announcement there, you know. So a lot of people want to throw away all applications for fluoride. But you make an interesting point in your paper. There is an appropriate use for fluoride, assuming that people will not eliminate sugar from the diet, right?
Correct. It's not just sugar, but also carbohydrates. So if a person decides that, he likes eating carbohydrates, he feels it goes well with his metabolism, his body, he has no problems, but he does have a problem with dental cavities, our most effective weapon against dental cavities is fluoride. And I think once again there, it's important to properly inform people and then let them make their own decisions. A very important message also is that oral hygiene does not help with preventing dental cavities, or at least it has a minor impact on the onset of dental cavities. So there have been 3 randomized controlled clinical trials. They've all been consistent in the sense they show that it doesn't reduce dental decay, which was a very common opinion in the early 20th century is also that, they said, oral hygiene just doesn't have an impact on dental decay. So just like it's important, I think, to inform people, sucrose is a main driver of what we refer to as coronal dental caries, which means on the white part of your teeth. Carbohydrates, cereals, starches is an important driver of cavities on your roots. If you do eat those food sources in appreciable amounts and you're susceptible to dental decay, realize that oral hygiene is not going to have a major impact. I mean, we don't have the evidence to say that it does. We do have the evidence.
I mean, we brush our teeth because we don't want our breath to smell. I mean, really, that's why we brush our teeth. But it really has no real impact on oral hygiene. That's fascinating to me.
So if it does have a preventive effect, it's so small that we haven't been able to identify it in controlled clinical trials.
And this is funny that you talk about this because Sergio Delgadillo says, I have a cleaning by a hygienist every 6 months, as do I. I have no cavities for over 20 years, but I get tartar and plaque buildup on the back of the lower teeth because that's where the tongue rests all day long.
Correct.
I have oil pulled, which is becoming popular. Are you familiar with oil pulling?
Yes.
I have oil pulled and flossed first thing in the AM 6 to 7 days a week for over 6 years. What could I do in terms of protocol or add to the regimen to address the tartar plaque buildup. I want to say something, and then we'll let the good doctor weigh in. Saliva is a natural filtrate of blood. If you are building up lots of calculus on the back of your teeth, you're building a plaque in your arteries and your veins. This is a fact. We did a show that correlates this, and people need to pay attention because this is the canary in the mine. If you build up a lot of plaque when you go for your teeth to be clean and they're digging and the crust and stuff is coming off, you need to be concerned about building a plaque inside your arteries and veins. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dr. Hujoel.
Yeah, so it's a very good question by Sergio. I wish I had an answer for him. Anecdotally, I can say that I think if you go on a very low carbohydrate diet, that you're more likely to have tartar buildup. We have, documents of hunter-gatherers which had a tremendous amount of calculus buildup. So how to avoid this calculus buildup with a diet is something very interesting. I don't have the answer, period.
Yeah. I don't think
So
anybody
there's many things, that we do have kind of interesting information from a dental perspective, but that's one on which we do not, in my opinion.
I will tell you this, Sergio, go get a coronal calcium score done. Make sure that you're not building a plaque inside your arteries, because there was a study published about 6 years ago that correlated these two very closely. And I'm a firm believer. Now, I don't know what I do. I mean, I eat a carnivore diet, but I have oatmeal in the morning. I don't eat a lot of sugar, but I just did for 5 days. I'm going to pay for that now for another couple of days. But the point is, you should definitely go have a calcium score done and make sure you're not building up any of that stuff inside your arteries. That's the only thing I would mention. So fluoride can be helpful to people who refuse to eat a low carbohydrate diet and continue to get cavities. So fluoride would do some protection, but my concern is fluoride that's swallowed. Isn't it enough to just get it on the teeth, the surface of the teeth?
Yeah, so I would kind of further specify it's our most potent weapon against dental cavities. I would not know what to recommend other than fluoride for a person who likes to eat sugar, who likes to eat carbohydrates. So it's our most potent weapon. So the point you raise about whether topical is enough, I mean, so we have a lot of evidence that toothpaste reduces dental cavities, that topical applications can prevent 1 out of 4 cavities. So this is something also where I think it's very important to inform people properly. I'm the first one, who will say, I like people who have vices. And so I would not, if somebody likes to eat sugar, great. I mean, that's not my business to, say, stop it. I feel my business is just to inform on, what are the risks and what can you do against those risks. So if a person chooses to eat sugar, fluoride will prevent 1 out of 4 cavities that person will have, roughly. So in other words, it's very important to inform people that, yes, fluoride is effective. It's amazingly effective, but it's not an antidote. I mean, it doesn't make you immune to dental cavities. You will not be able to avoid, out of the 4 cavities you will get, you will prevent 1 cavity. So so that is very important. Fluoride is effective, number 1. 2, it is very effective, but don't look upon it as an antidote that, basically thinking, if I floss my teeth, if I use fluoride, I will be able to prevent cavities. 100%. No, it's not 100%.
Is there anything in your career that you've, other than the low carbohydrate diet and abstaining from sugar, simple sugars, is there anything that you've seen people that had superior oral health, very, very few cavities, if any at all? Were there any things that you could connect the dots and say, well, yeah, this may have a role?
You mean that some people can have a cavity-free life and yet eat sugar every day?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Or wait a minute, or just a cavity-free life, and we don't even know what they were eating. Like, what is the magic to oral cavity that produces protection against dental caries?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. So in the 1940s, there was this very dominant hypothesis, in part because it was funded by the sugar industry, which said that if you had a sound tooth, in other words, if you have a tooth that's properly mineralized, so we're from the moment of conception in utero to, the age of 12, when the last tooth is, ignoring wisdom teeth, are becoming mineralized. If you have a lot of vitamin D and a lot of minerals and a lot of vitamin K, in other words, if you have a mineralizing diet, you have a sound tooth, and you can eat all the sugar you want. That's, of course, a dream for the sugar industry. So I think it's very important to also, if you're a lucky person and you have quote unquote sound teeth, that's just wonderful, right? You can eat whatever you want. You won't get dental cavities. I wish I was in that category, but I'm not. So I think vitamin D deficiencies are very, very common. And as a result, teeth that are not properly mineralized are very common, which is why the majority of the world still has, is susceptible to dental cavities, unfortunately. So, but I would say, to answer your question specifically, I think the key to have a life where you have minimal problems with dental cavities is to have a properly mineralized tooth. And so that's another kind of very fascinating historical fact that in 1942, the American Dental Association said it's an established fact that you need to have a good mineralizing diet to prevent dental cavities. And that notion has completely disappeared almost. I mean, it's a...
Yeah, I've never heard it discussed. I've never heard it discussed. I mean, I get a lot of minerals in my diet, and I'm lucky. I don't have any new cavities since I've been an adult. I had them when I was a young man. But I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that promote mineralization. One of the things that promotes mineralization is force. I had an interesting dentist on probably 5 years ago who is creating these, they look like bite guards, but you wear them for a certain number of hours a day and they apply pressures. So like he does this thing called a chimera. He takes a picture of your face, slices it down the middle, makes a version of your face using the left side, makes a version of your face using the right side. It's two different skulls. And he says that's because people chew predominantly on one side. The bone mineralization occurs on this side. Their teeth are even stronger on this side. So force helps to mineralize food. And we're seeing a trend through evolution where jaws are narrowing. We have young children whose jaws are so narrow they start snoring at 3 and 4 years old because the soft palate collapses. And he says we have become a population of mush eaters. We don't bite, we don't chew. There's nothing that we have to really chew hard. And from an evolutionary perspective, it's changing the shape of our jaw and the mineralization of the bones. What do you think of that?
So it's a very fascinating point in the sense that you mentioned earlier Weston Price, and so that was one of his major observations that, in just a few generations, 1 or 2, you go from these people who have just perfect sets of teeth to suddenly, you have palatal constriction and you have basically malocclusions that start occurring. So yes, I mean, I think, nutrition is extremely important. I mean, to me, it was a shock when I read a few years ago that hunter-gatherers, they were basically breastfeeding until the age of 3. And then, when the kid weans, he doesn't go on to soft foods. No, he will, be there, with the mother. The kid is breastfeeding, will be curious, grabs food from the mother, that the mother is eating. And so they may get a piece of meat or something, which requires them to start chewing, to have put forces on the developing craniofacial skeleton. So definitely a lot of things have changed, over the last, 60, 70 years with respect to, the feeding from infancy, from birth up until the age of 3, and which self-evidently must have an impact on your craniofacial skeleton.
Yeah. We're going to take our last commercial break. When we come back, I want to know what you hope this recent paper, how it impacts both clinicians and the public. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Superhuman Radio. Remember those rectangular toaster pastries you used to love when you were a kid? Well, Legendary Foods has just made them better. The new cake-style tasty pastry is like nothing you've ever had before. With 20 grams of high-quality protein and less than 1 gram of sugar, you'll feel like you're cheating, but you're not. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use the code SHR10 to save 10% off your purchase of tasty pastries. Now available in cookies and cream, red velvet cake, birthday cake, blueberry, strawberry, brown sugar cinnamon, and hot fudge sundae. Go to shrnetwork.biz/legendary and use code SHR10 today. Never before has a product been so appropriately named as Botanic Tonics Feel Free. This plant-based elixir combines a variety of different effective compounds, all from raw plant materials that at different doses provide you with completely different experiences. A third of a bottle puts you in the zone and makes you very focused and is ideal for a non-stimulating pre-workout. It also has a mild analgesic effect for us older lifters who have soreness and little pains and aches that keep us from training as ferociously as we want. A half a bottle will create a mild euphoric effect that will allow you to forego consuming alcohol, but still be socially lubricated and have fun. I have never had a product deliver on its name the way Botanic Tonics Feel Free does, and I won't ever be without it, and you shouldn't either. Go to shrnetwork.biz/feelfree and use the code SHR40 for 40% off your first order. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. I would easily say that I am the hugest proponent you will ever meet to doing anything that will improve the quality of my sleep. And that's because sleep is linked to just about every metabolic disorder we see in our population today. One of the easiest things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep is to get a pillow that can be shaped into the exact form factor that allows you to get your best night's sleep. And that is MyPillow. I've been sleeping with MyPillow for a few years now, and I can tell you that when I have to travel and stay in hotels, I don't get a good night's sleep because I don't have MyPillow with me. Right now, you can save up to 60% off of everything offered to improve the quality of your sleep at shrnetwork.biz/mypillow when you use the code SHR. Or you can call toll-free 800-889-4938. And remember to use code SHR to save up to 60% off of everything at their website. There are lots of concerns about food supply today. That's why you need White Oak Pastures. White Oak Pastures will deliver food right to your doorstep. You don't even have to go out and be disappointed by shopping in grocery stores. The finest beef, pork, lamb, duck, and more can be found at White Oak Pastures. And now they even have seafood. And best of all, White Oak Pastures has a negative carbon footprint, which means that you don't have to feel guilty for eating your ribeye. Go to shrnetwork.biz/white oak and use the code SUPERHUMAN to save 15% off.
Spit that out right now. This is the Superhuman Channel.
Welcome back. So, Dr. Hujoel, what do you hope people take away from this? If you can wave a wand and make behaviors change overnight from this, what you've discovered, not just from this study, but from your journey to the point of doing this study, what would you hope happens?
I think the most important change that I would hope to see is something that was said by one of the pioneers in evidence-based medicine. His name is David Sackett, which is that any organization, I don't care which organization it is, should not provide public health recommendation unless they are supported by pivotal randomized trials. So if they want to say, that, for instance, fluoride is effective in preventing dental caries, you need to have the randomized controlled trials to support that statement. And so we do have that evidence for fluoride, but obviously in the 20th century, many messages were provided and still today are provided to people. They're providing public health advice. Like, for instance, the World Health Organization has said that meat is a carcinogen. To me, is absolutely insane. Any person that's into evidence-based medicine, and actually Giat, who is the person who coined the term evidence-based medicine, wrote an article on that particular public health advice from the World Health Organization. So the very first thing I would hope for is that any organization that tells an unsuspecting healthy person, one of my favorite words from David Sackett, should have randomized controlled trial evidence to support it. The second thing is, once again, I don't have any original ideas here, but this is from a dental organization in the 1940s, and they said no baby was ever born crying for candy. So I think it's very important, early in life, the first couple of years, there is no need for sucrose, there is no need for candy, there is no need for sweets. Try to have, an as much as possible ancestral diet. Obviously, the first months, years, it is breastfeeding, and then if you introduce foods, I will always think, well, what would our ancestors have done in terms of introducing foods? And you may think there about Weston Price and those people, and read the book and kind of see. The third thing I would like people to remember, specifically when it comes to teeth, at one point, a mineralizing diet was considered very important. So if you think about infants, if you think about, children, it's very important prior to puberty to have enough mineralizing elements in your diet. And vitamin D is one of those things, but you also need other mineral elements, other vitamins in all likelihood, that are absolutely necessary to have strong teeth. I mean, the message strong teeth is important. And maybe, for your particular show, one thing which I would also say is I am personally on a very low carbohydrate diet. I think it's very important to think when you're on such a diet about vitamin C. Vitamin C is, present in fruits mostly, which have sucrose. So if we avoid sucrose, we avoid a major source of vitamin C. Then if you are on a low carb diet like I am, you avoid potatoes, and they say, potatoes save the world from scurvy. There's a lot of vitamin C in there. So I have this sense, based on several sources of evidence, that if you go on a low carb diet, that you have to be cognizant, about food sources where vitamin C is in. So, for instance, our ancestors, the skin of a whale is loaded with vitamin C, but I'm not going to eat that. Right. I'm not going to eat adrenal glands. For myself, I kind of cannot eat kale every day, cannot eat peppers every day. And I've kind of come to the conclusion, that, vitamin C is hard to get on a low carbohydrate diet. And you have to be cognizant about it. And so I'll finish with this one thing, which I kind of just recently discovered, which I find fascinating. So I mentioned this condition, which is called hereditary fructose intolerance. So these are people that cannot eat sucrose, that cannot eat fructose, they cannot eat sorbitol. In 1989, there was a dental study done on these people, and they noticed they had bleeding gums. The most likely reason they had bleeding gums is, they're on a very low sugar diet. And unfortunately, sugar is kind of strongly linked to vitamin C. So you need to realize that, unless you have ancestral wisdom and you know which natural food sources you can find vitamin C in, it may be hard to get it in your diet.
Well, and that's why we can supplement, right? The reason that vegans are alive today is because they can buy B12 at the grocery store. Otherwise, they'd all be dead. So you have to supplement. And what's really fascinating? Whenever we talk about vitamin C, there are only 2 species on the planet that don't produce their own vitamin C, and that is guinea pigs and humans. That's it. Guinea pigs develop scurvy if they don't have vitamin C in their diet. Humans develop scurvy and all sorts of other, when they're subclinically low in vitamin C. There's lots of other disorders linked to low vitamin C. But here's something fascinating. We just did this show earlier this year. So the Chinese Navy didn't bring canned vegetables on their boats like we did. And then people died of lead poisoning because the lead leached into the vegetables. They raised cows on their ships. They drank the milk. They bred cows. They ate the beef. So here's something that the USDA has done a great dishonest disservice to the American population. Beef is filled with polyphenols. You know how we go, oh, you got to eat your red and your blue vegetables to get your beef has polyphenols. The cows eat it and it ends up in every cell of their flesh, including their muscle. Guess what else beef has? It has vitamin C in it. And the Chinese Navy never developed scurvy. They were healthy. They came home just as healthy as they left. The American Navy, those guys came home. They had to be carried off the ship after being out there for 5, 6, 7 months at a time because they were so deficient in so many nutrients. Beef has vitamin C in it. And we just had a doctor on about 5 months ago who gave us the rundown of everything that they detected in beef. The USDA doesn't care. They don't want to know that beef has vitamin C. They don't want it because beef is bad today. They don't want anybody promoting beef as good. But everything you eat as a human ends up in every cell of your body. And that's true of cows too. They eat all that good green stuff, polyphenols and all sorts of great stuff, and they turn it into healthy protein, and we eat them and we get that stuff too. So beef has vitamin C in it. It really does.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Sorry?
I said fascinating. It's fascinating.
Yeah, so I
Anyway.
think, if you read most food sources, the meat we eat, or I should say the meat I eat, does not have vitamin C in it, unfortunately. There is this whole kind of argument, which is very fascinating. We have never really measured the vitamin C requirement of people on a carnivorous diet. Maybe it's much lower. Some people say it's much lower. But vitamin C is very hard to get if you just eat the steaks and, the ground beef and those things. I mean, from everything I've seen, there is no vitamin C in there. There may be vitamin C in adrenal glands. There may be vitamin C.
I have to respectfully disagree. We just did this show with a new study. There is vitamin C in beef muscle meat. And there's adequate amounts of vitamin C that if you have a ribeye every single day, you're probably getting about 150 to 200 milligrams of vitamin C in it. This is part of the inability to make informed decisions as a human being today on what is healthy and what is not, because we don't get all the information we should. We only get the information that supports the organizations that are telling us what to do to be healthy. That what they want us to know, and it's very, very sad. But and in fact, I think he was from Oregon State University. I'll have to find it. He was he had a very German last name, but he came on and he gave us the whole profile of everything that is found in a steak. Vitamin C was in there in adequate amounts. Polyphenols was in there in adequate. All sorts of things that no one attributes to eating meat. It's in there. So it really is worth people doing their own research and finding out. Listen, Dr. Hujoel, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. This is fascinating stuff. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Take care.
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody tomorrow with more Superhuman Radio. Don't forget, share the show. Share the show. You never know who you're going to help by sharing a show. We'll see you tomorrow.